Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Monday, the 25th day of September, year of our Lord 2017. Welcome to the John Moore Show. Well, we had our Saturday, September 23rd, didn't we? And we'll talk about that a little bit. Let's go to the prepper tip of the day, in which we're going to talk about also. And if Jimmy Ginsling calls with Desert Eagle Shoot, we'll have Jimmy join us. Proper tip of the day is to have your pastor make sure all the ushers of your church are armed and trained in the proper use of deadly force. Trained in the proper use of deadly force and trained in and properly armed so that they can implement deadly force if necessary to protect innocent human life. In case you have been not paying attention, yesterday morning, a 25-year-old black male named Emmanuel Kadika Sampson, who is from Sudan, went into a premises of a church in Antioch, Tennessee, just a town just south of Nashville, Tennessee, the Burnett Chapel Church of Christ. He murdered a woman in the parking lot as soon as he got out of his car, went inside, pistol whipped the usher, and then shot six more people, I believe it was. The usher ran to his car, got his pistol, and held the murderer for the police to arrive. The murderer was equipped with two firearms. We don't know, at least I don't know what type they were. So the proper tip of the day, and we're going to discuss this in more detail, is to make sure your pastor has all your ushers trained in the proper use of deadly force and that they are armed. We have now joining us our regular Monday morning guest, Mr. Jimmy Ginsling with DesertEagleShooters.com. Jimmy, good morning.
Good morning, sir. And if there's a little bit of noise or something on the lines, I apologize. We had about 3 inches of rain hit us in about 4 minutes, it seemed like, just a bit ago. So that means that the phone lines up on the road where they connect up and everything probably got flooded.
Uh-huh. So, well, that's not good. Well, it's not the best audio, but it's okay audio. Jimmy, we normally talk about firearms on Mondays, and which we're going to do on one hand. On the other, I believe our focus needs to be on making sure that every Christian church listening to us, the members of that church, talk to their pastor, make sure that they have ushers that are trained in proper use of deadly force, and they're both armed. What do you think, sir?
Oh, I could not agree with you anymore, John.
Okay.
Here in New Mexico, the Southern Baptist Convention, they tout that very heavily. And then my friend Chuck, he can't remember which church it is that he goes to, but they have alternating armed men in their church and women. Each Sunday, it's your turn, but that doesn't mean on the ones that it's not your turn that you can't be armed. It's getting to the point now that I don't go anywhere without having at least one firearm and two reserves. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have heard me refer to reserves a lot of times and maybe not caught it. I don't know if I ever described what that was, John, but reserves, if you've got a semi-auto, it is spare magazines. If you're carrying a revolver, it's either round speed loaders or the Bianchi, what I call strip loaders. They've got an actual technical term for them. But on the strip loaders, all your bullets are in line. They're not round like those speed loaders. Right. But it's getting to this point, ladies and gentlemen, that you cannot guess where it's going to happen next. And this is what, the third or fourth church shooting that we've had in the last couple of years.
I've lost track. One is too many, but we don't know yet. Being from Sudan, he could be Christian, he could be Muslim, There's some each in Sudan. He may be a member of Black Lives Matter. He may just be nutso. But regardless, these churches have become targets, haven't they?
Oh, yes. Churches have been targets for years in one aspect or another. Churches became targets, in my opinion, in World War II, and is just kind of faded into oblivion then, and then coming up into the 60s with the woman that didn't want prayer in school and stuff, the target went from school to church. And unfortunately, I think that we've got, and I've heard some of these people, I'm sure you've heard a few, pastors and everything that just, reek of turn the other cheek and blah, 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 and this and that. God tells us in the Old Testament that it is a man's job. The number one thing that a man is to do is protect and provide for his family. And
that's right.
I'm wondering how this message has gotten lost. I was a chaplain in the Coast Guard and volunteer chaplain, and going from that aspect on, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. Man, if anybody wants to see a person that God should probably turn his nose up to, all they got to do is take one look at me. If there is a disaster out there, if there is things that God frowns upon and everything, I have broken that rule more than once in my life. And God still loves me, and he loves everybody that's out there. So you need to sit down, like John said. Get the men of the church together that maybe have concealed carry. You live in a state that has constitutional carry, even better. But by the end of this evening, every faithful Christian that I can think of that listens to this radio should have already called their pastor and other men of the church and arranged, sit down over coffee. Do it at the church, do it at somebody's house, do it at a restaurant, I don't care. But sit down and talk to the pastor and work something out. Doesn't have to be the dedicated individual carry, and it's even better if it's not, because you may have an individual in your church that's on the fence, and them knowing this, it could lead them to when to do it. But that conversation needs to be had before the Wednesday services. And if your pastor doesn't want to condone it, and there are no state laws that prevent it, then, gentlemen and ladies, I say carry anyway.
Right,
right. This is getting really, I used to say it's getting bad, and I just listened to myself getting ready to say that again. No, it is bad. It's been bad for a long time. It's just some people are starting to notice it.
Well, in the local communities around where I live, I know the one community, Viburnum, Missouri, they had a meeting of all the interested pastors a few weeks after the San Bernardino shootings. That would have been January of 2016, just over a year and a half ago. And the police offered guidance as to how to set up proper security, and I know some of the churches participated in it. I don't know how many, but I think there's going to be a renewed interest in this nationwide. I'll be offering my service as a concealed carry instructor. I'll be working with the police also to make sure that the proper protocols are put in place. As to your last comment there, Jimmy, it's going to vary from state to state as to the rules about carrying concealed in a church. In the state of Missouri, you have to have permission from some person in a position of authority at the church before you can legally carry concealed in a church in Missouri. That's state law. Whenever I'm attending one of these churches, I always ask the pastor for permission to carry concealed, and without exception, they've always granted me that permission. It's just the right thing to do. If the pastor declines to set up proper security for the church, given the times we live in, I think you might be going to the wrong church. What do you think, Jimmy?
Oh, I could not agree more, John. Right now, in this day and age, everything is upside down. The Bible tells us that in the last days, what is wrong will be considered right, and what is right will be considered wrong. And we're standing right in the middle of that right now. I mean, this whole... You hear thumping in the background. It's my puppy dog, Theodore, sitting here wanting attention, thumping his tail. Everything is upside down, John. If we would have said that if you and I were sitting 20 years ago talking about this, we'd be taking it as a joke. We'd be helping carry the people off to the funny farm that were telling us that this was going to happen. It's just upside down. At the last gun show over in Alamogordo, we were looking at the ballistic panels. We carried two small ones, 10 by 12, I think it is, or 8 by 11. But parents are buying these things and sticking them in their kids' backpacks. And we're talking New Mexico. We're talking out here in the proverbial sticks. And it's, in cities it's even worse. Albuquerque right now is a friggin' war zone up there with what's... Right. And well,
it's nothing new, Jimmy, that pre-adolescent children growing up in the inner city can tell what caliber is being fired by the sound. That's an acquired skill that most adults don't have, but in the inner city it's quite common for pre-adolescent children to be able to determine the caliber by listening to the sound of the gunfire. Many parents in the inner city have their children sleep in the cast iron bathtub to make sure that they wake up in the morning without being shot. And there's been a number of instances of children being armed by their parents. That's not talked about too much, but frequently when a firearm is taken from a child on the schoolyard in the inner city, a child was already had been armed by their parent. That's how bad it is when the parents are arming their children.
Yes.
It's out of control. It's absolutely out of control.
And you have discussed this many times. If we do come down to the caca hit the whirling device situation, the people that live in those situations, it's over. If they're not out of there by now, or in the very near future, and things do fall apart, the chances of getting out and getting out safely are reduced exponentially, and it's going to get worse day after day. It's sick. It is, I just cannot put my finger on the time and the day that it happened, and won't be able to, but the end result is that it has happened. Ladies and gentlemen, keep your guns clean and conceal carry wherever you go that is legal. And we have considering now that statement I just made where it's legal. In New Mexico, all of the Walmart stores have got a sign in the front of the window and states that any weapons carried on premises, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is, and ladies and gentlemen, check your state regulations, and it will tell you exactly what the sign has got to say. And you cannot change it with punctuation, with anything. The sign has got to be exact. And these signs in the Walmarts are wrong. Someone took a lot of literary, advantage in writing it.
Literary license was called. Well, Jimmy, I cover this in my concealed carry training, and what I tell my students, and almost every state has a similar statute, if the sign does not comply with the statute, then it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Frequently we'll see a 6 by 6 inch black circle, or a 6 by 6 inch sign, I should say, with a black pistol and a red circle with a line through it.
That is a suggestion.
Yeah. Now that doesn't comply with Missouri statute. So I tell my students when I see that black pistol with a red line through it, they can just simply ignore it, because as far as the law is concerned, that sign does not exist. And you're right. The statutes in the various 50 states, they're very specific as to the size of the sign, what the sign has to say, and even the size of the lettering.
Yep.
And
the position of the floor.
Sometimes it could be that specific. It depends on the state. So yes. So don't get too bent out of shape about these signs that are not compliant with statute. Basically, it's just a free pass. You can readily and easily ignore that sign if it does not comply with the statute in your particular state.
Exactly. And like John just said, ladies and gentlemen, it's that sign that I said it, but John described it. That sign is a suggestion. It's a desire of whoever owns the store.
Right.
And
yeah.
I remember a phrase years ago I heard, and I've heard it once or twice on different series and movies and things. Sometimes it's best to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission.
Right.
And
well, we need to keep in mind that what we're talking about applies to businesses open to the public. Does not apply to government buildings. Now, once again, it's going to vary from state to state. Missouri's statutes are really pretty convoluted and difficult to understand when it comes to courthouses, for example. So I just simply tell my students to not carry into a government building. That's the safe thing to do, whether it's a city hall, a county office, a state office, obviously a federal agency. Just leave it locked up in the car. That's the safe thing to do. Here's our break. Call number is 800-313-9443. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 25th of September. Visiting with Jimmy Ginsling. Jimmy, I got a quick update. I talked to Tim Spencer last night. His recovery from the amputation is going as well as can be expected. They got a cast on the amputated body part to keep him from hurting it while the stitches are healing up. The cast should be removed soon, and he's looking forward to getting his prosthetic and being able to ambulate again. So it's moving right along. And yes,
I'm so glad. This whole family that we have here on RBN and everything are such top-notch people and everything. I find it great to be associated with them. And when one hurts, everybody feels it.
That's right.
So that is really good news.
That's right.
Back to what we were discussing and everything. Ladies and gentlemen, really seriously, we need to get these conversations started with the pastors. And like John said, if they don't stand up with it and allow it or something like that, you might very well be at the wrong church.
May very well. We are targets. The apologists for Muslims, I know they mean well. I have a friend, she says, John, I have Muslim friends and they're nice people. Well, I don't doubt that for a moment. They're probably nice people and of goodwill and so forth. But that's not the problem with the good ones. The problem is the 10 or 15 or 20%, I'm not sure of the percentage, that want to kill the rest of us. That's the problem, isn't it, Jimmy?
That is the ultimate situation. I've got a gut feeling that this shooting that took place over the weekend, that I don't know. I have a gut feeling that either it's going to find out that he converted to Islam or was at one time Islam and has gotten fed up with this and that and everything else. I don't know. But we brought it on ourselves. And we have allowed people that we could not just in good conscience, but at all, agree with, determine what laws...
Listen to this. Sudan is 97% Muslim. This guy's from Sudan. So, there you go.
Yeah.
Since he's from Sudan, there's a 97% chance that he is Muslim. Keeping in mind that American immigration policies make it very difficult for Christians to immigrate from these Islamic countries. Very difficult.
Yeah. And I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where we go from here.
Well, we take care of our own. That's what we do. We take care of our own. We got a call here, Jimmy. We got Rick in Missouri. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Jimmy. I'll try to be brief. I see we're coming up on another break, but I was impressed to see that this Sudanese butt clown was a bodybuilder, and the 22-year-old guy looked to me to be a fellow of relatively average stature, and this man must have been highly motivated to do what he did to put a stop to this offensive act. And that was kind of impressive. Had he had a weapon on him, it probably would have that pastor's wife would probably still be alive. But what I did want to say about this, and I don't want to preach to the choir, so I don't want to waste any time, any of your show time, but I think folks tend to look for holiness in the extreme, in the bombastic. People who have done amazing things, people we call saints. You'd be astonished to see the amazing artifact that the Catholic Church sits on. They're sitting on.
You want to finish your comment after the break, Rick?
Yeah, I wasn't fast enough. Yes.
Okay, hold on. We have a break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. I've worked with men and women involved in the high-end shelters for years. With the Ozark Survival Homestead, you get things you don't get with the high-end shelters. You get a opportunity to be in the bunker, of course. You also get a home, a 60 by 90 lot. You get your storable food, your livestock, share, your garden, greenhouse share, your seed bank share. One person to have everything they need, right at $25,000. For a family of three, $37,000. You really need to check this out. It's very unique. At my website, you'll see the Ozark Survival Homesteads on the left side of my homepage. Go there, read that one page, fill out the form with your name, your email address, and your telephone number, and I will forward that to the guys and gals at the Ozark Survival Homesteads. Check it out. You'll be very glad you did. Thank you very much. All right, we are back. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 25th of September. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. Yeah, there's a lot there, all right. A lot to learn, a lot to educate yourself, entertain yourself, or maybe, possibly even make you upset. That's certainly a possibility. A lot there. Including our project, it's the listeners. I couldn't possibly do this by myself. One human being couldn't possibly watch 250,000 hours worth of movies and TV shows the last 60 years, because that's where the project goes to, is television shows and movies the past 6 decades, where there's images of continents with new coastlines. And it's a fascinating project. You can see the images we've recovered the past 9 months. There's a bunch of them there. TV shows and movies, even a magazine and a poster in a restaurant in Austin, Texas. If you find an image of a continent with new coastlines and a TV show or a movie, get that to me. You, as a thank you, you get your choice of any of my 5 DVDs that I will mail to you ASAP. Also, my website, of course, are energy cleaners. We ship these all over the world, literally all over the world, mostly the English-speaking world. I ship quite a few to Australia and Canada, United Kingdom, Ireland, occasional one to Germany. Only $285 shipping included. It's a healing device, is what it is. If you have arthritis pain, it'll probably help. Joint pain, yes, probably help there too. Back pain, yep, work there also. I use mine every night. I wake up pain-free in the morning with lots of energy, and you can also. It'll help you get a great night's sleep, by the way. I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to my website at thelibertyman.com. Read up on the patent application details. It's fascinating. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads to go with the energy cleaner. Then go ahead and make your purchase. This is my home business. I'm the guy that boxes them up and ships them. I do take PayPal, the most secure way to make any payment online, MasterCard, Visa. And you can send me a check to my address at thelibertyman.com. Toll-free outline, 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. We're visiting with Jimmy Ginsling, the proprietor of Desert Eagle Shooters. That's deserteagleshooters.com. And Rick from Missouri has a follow-up comment.
Yeah, this is a very fine point, and I hope I'm able to articulate it intelligently. We're seeing some sort of a phenomenon in society, and it appears to me that we're reaching or have reached some strange fork in the road where the sheeps are going one way and the goats another, and there are people that will argue ad nauseum about whether or not this is some natural phenomenon that's being created by incompetent millennial parenting, or whether progressives have so deteriorated things like the school systems in our society and even the military to the point where it's just kind of like digging holes all around, and eventually you step in one. But we can argue all day about where this comes from, but the fact of the matter is, it seems to be here. And if, people have always had a tendency to look at Mother Teresa, Gandhi, and all these amazing figures, but I think the tool right at your fingertips, if you're one of those people that can sense something around you, like a new world order or an evil entity, in everything that you see, feel, smell, touch, taste. If you can tell they're there, then maybe you will be one of the lucky ones, and you won't have to go the way of the goat. And that is, and then so the practical application there is, yeah, you're absolutely right, John. Take care of your own, because at that point, things seem to matter more, like staying right with God and prepping and other things like that. They make perfect sense to me, but I do think other people are starting to get an eyeball on that. What we're seeing happening now regularly didn't happen 20, 30 years ago like we see every week now. It's some insane thing every time you turn around. That was all I wanted to say about that. And by the way, Jimmy, there apparently is a learning curve with respect to a scope pistol. If you take that thing and lay down on your belly, it won't be touching your shoulder. And if you get real comfortable and pull the trigger, you will. Well, I was the most manly-looking man in church yesterday. You get what they call scope eye. And I wasn't carrying in church, but I looked dangerous. I was very masculine. I think all the ladies really enjoyed that. So,
well, do you have a cut above your eye from a scope yesterday morning? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's 30 caliber, and the pistol doesn't touch your shoulder. So if this is the first time you've ever done it, you're thinking your shoulder will catch that, and of course it doesn't, and your eyebrow will. So you got to figure out how to work this. There's a little bit of a learning curve there. I'll just do it the once. I think I did it back when I was a teenager, but now I remember.
I remember. We'll cover that with you sometime this afternoon.
Okay. I'll be around. By the way, I'm really enjoying the unit. Thanks a million. Good show.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate the call.
Any John, I've got a call in. Hopefully we'll get a friend of mine, my videographer, Chuck, to call in. He's one I mentioned earlier that at the church that they carry on rotation and stuff. But getting back to what we're discussing here and everything, ladies and gentlemen, practice. And not just paper. When you get out there and you do go through your pistol practice and everything, hopefully once a week, if not at the absolute very minimum once a month to keep everything fresh. Since these incidences have happened in churches and other places where people would be seated, practice drawing that weapon from a seated position. Recommend, first off, drop the mag, clear the weapon, make sure that it is safe. But put it in your normal carry position and draw it while seated without standing up. And see if you need to reconsider your carry options on that.
Right.
I
like the shoulder holster myself, so a right-handed usher should be seated on the right side of the church. A left-handed usher should be seated on the left side of the church, so they can, assuming that they're going to have an aggressor to their left for a right-handed shooter and to their right for a left-handed shooter.
Exactly.
Most churches have a central door that leads to a central aisle. Now, there could be churches, of course, where there's an outside door, then a lobby, and then 2 or 3 doors leading into the sanctuary. So it's going to vary from church to church. We got a caller on hold here, Jimmy. We got Barbara in Missouri. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning, sir. Hi. Again, I'd like to share something I think is an important item to keep in your bug-out bag, a must-have. Talking about baking soda. It has multiple purposes. If I can just race through this, I'll get to the point. I use baking soda now for cleansing, body cleansing, because of all the chemicals they put in the soap. and I'm wondering what kind of effect it has on, in relation to the sun, the plasma rays that are coming to us, but that, I'm not going to go there. Baking soda you use for cleaning, body, face, hair, clothes. It's good for, it's a disinfectant, you know, and, you can store it in recycled bottles, plastic bottles, because they're easier to store and they're easier to carry. You know, you can cook with them, you can brush your teeth with them. In extreme, cases, you can use it dry as a deodorant. It has the same pH as skin and tears. It'll disinfect your mouth and prevent tooth decay. You know, and these, in the long term, what are you going to do? So, you know, this is where my mindset is. I like to suggest things that people can have that will go far and way less.
Yeah. Now, Barbara, I've heard of people using a combination of baking soda and table salt for brushing teeth. Do you use baking soda by itself, or do you combine salt with it? Brush teeth, toothbrushing.
Just pure and unadulterated baking soda.
Okay.
It's kind of redundant. They're both sodium-ish, you know. But, yeah, you save your salt for your food, man.
Okay.
You know, the baking soda, you can just designate the baking soda for cleansing clothes, and, you know, let me throw in one more thing. For food storage, you know, you have your dry goods, your flour, your beans, and rice and things, and bugs get in the thing somehow. Diatomaceous earth, you find in the garden centers. It is fossilized, insects or whatever.
They're fossilized, very small animal organisms, what they are. I've done this, Barbara. I don't know if you have or not, but you don't want to breathe that stuff. First of all, you need to wear a respirator because if it gets in your lungs, it can be harmful. And
or your eyes.
You're not going to want to do it in your home. You're going to want, in the main part of your house where you live. We used a 2-car garage. And at the end of a day of storing grain in that manner, we both looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy from having the diatomaceous earth all over us, with a nice clean spot where the respirator was. So it does work. It's very effective, and it's healthy to consume diatomaceous earth by itself. It's a very beneficial thing to have in your gut. Anything else, Barbara?
Just to close this out, putting your dry goods in a plastic container and then putting the diatomaceous earth maybe in the bottom or around, away from the food, although it won't hurt you if you consume it, but it'll keep the bugs from eating through your dry good bags or whatever you have stored. And it gets the fleas off your pets too. You just can't get it in their eyes or in their nose. That's another thing. I didn't plan to go there, but there you go.
Okay. Well, thank you for the call, Barbara. We appreciate it. The thing about diatomaceous earth is when storing bulk grains, all bulk grains, now listen to me carefully, it doesn't matter whether it's organic or not, all bulk grains have bugs in them that have not hatched yet. So when these bugs hatch out, the diatomaceous earth kills them. So that's why you want the diatomaceous earth thoroughly mixed in. Food grade diatomaceous earth, not the same stuff that's used in swimming pools, but food grade diatomaceous earth. Okay, we got a call in here, Chance in West Virginia. Good morning, Chance.
Good morning, Chance. How are we doing this morning?
Okay. I got to ask you a question because I got rid of that satanic TV box years ago. Regarding that church incident, it's going to be interesting to see how the media covers this. Now, what race were the victims, by any chance? Do you know?
Do not.
Yeah, my webmaster Tim Spencer says the congregation was a mixed race congregation. So I don't know that detail yet.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to find out how the media covers this. And if he turns out to be a Muslim,
how they're going to begrudgingly tell you, or even tell the public at all. And that's what I'm concerned with.
Right.
This is why I don't watch the TV, because, you know what I'm saying? How they're going to twist this regarding certain circumstances of their shooting, the races included, and if he's a Muslim, it's going to be very curious. People should pay attention to this, finally, and once and for all, see how the media is slanted.
Yeah. Well, this matter will be in the news cycle probably until the end of the day, Wednesday. Then it'll be gone as far as mainstream media is concerned. So we got today, tomorrow, and Wednesday to see what the media does with it. I doubt that we'll see much in the mainstream media after Wednesday. Chance.
I doubt very seriously, John, if they're going to cover it like they did the South Carolina shooting.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering also. Yeah.
I have a gut. It's going to be a totally different.
It won't get that kind of attention. That's not going to happen.
Oh, no.
And you know what's really sad, JR, is that for all these victims shot, they leave behind so many family members that are mourning for them. And American people have gotten so cold that they fail to recognize that fact.
Exactly.
That's really, really sad. It's not just one victim that's killed. They leave behind a whole trail of victims. Okay, gentlemen. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for the call, Chance. We appreciate it.
Well, we got a lot of calls on this one this morning, John. And,
well, I expect we would. It's a very disturbing scenario.
I'm hoping that Chuck will call in. I never understood exactly how their program works at their church and everything. Him and I have discussed it a few times. But the simple fact of the matter is, if individuals can legally carry in their church, do it, please, because this individual had to go out to his car to retrieve his weapon. And that, praise God that he made it and no one else was injured. But this is right in the heart of nowhere again where this happened. Not a big city, not any place that's been in the news. And another thing, John, on the news, we have not heard anything out here in New Mexico, West Texas, about what was going on there in Missouri after that acquittal. They mentioned it, and that was it.
Right.
I have no idea up within that region.
The governor who just took office in January, Missouri Governor Eric Greitens, he's a former Navy SEAL, and he's not putting up with this stuff. He had the National Guard already deployed and in the city in uniform and armed when the court decision was released, ready to get on the streets if necessary. And the St. Louis City Police did an excellent job controlling these communists. That's what these are. These are communist agitators, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And their tactics, the communist agitators' tactics changed to where they were popping up in multiple places around metropolitan St. Louis. The police in all places responded. My wife saw it twice in her travels to different shopping and venues and so forth. Here's our next break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 25th of September, visiting with Jimmy Gensling, the proprietor of DesertEagleShooters.com. Jimmy, let's talk a little bit about, we only got about 3 minutes here, but we can start the discussion and carry over. A choice of firearms for these ushers that are going to be protecting these churches. As you and most of my listeners know, I'm not a big fan of Glocks on one hand. On the other, they do more or less shoot where you point them. They are reliable. They're not really a terribly expensive pistol. They're sort of mid-range in terms of price. There's certainly more expensive pistols and cheaper ones. But the main thing is to have one in a caliber, what's called a major caliber, 9mm or 38 or larger, and to have the person carrying it be trained, preferably off-duty law enforcement or a combat veteran. There was an incident in a town I lived in most of my adult life, Kirkwood, Missouri, a St. Louis suburb, where a angry man armed himself, walked into the city council chamber, which had 2 on-duty, in uniform, police officers on the premises, and started shooting the place up, murdering, I think, 3 or 4 people, maybe more, in the council chamber. The point being, these police officers who were trained and qualified as police officers, I don't believe that either one of them have ever been in combat before, which, in my mind, as an instructor and as a combat veteran, means they hesitated a moment before they drew their weapons and returned fire, just enough for this perpetrator to murder several people, including, I believe, one of the police officers. So combat veterans would be a good choice, assuming that they want to participate in this and get their training. You still need training in proper use of deadly force above and beyond being a combat veteran. But I believe every Christian church in the entire planet should be doing this. What do you think, Jimmy?
Oh, wholeheartedly. And in the choice of weapons and everything, the only thing I can say is something that you're comfortable with and you know. Never take a brand new handgun or anything like that you haven't become familiar with intimately to a situation where you may have to defend life, limb, and property. I'm not a big fan of Glocks either. Some of it is political. Some of it is just the gun itself. I've never found one that fits me well. But if you do own a Glock, and it is one of the Glocks with the dovetail sights on it, i.e. that you can replace the sights, the very first modification I would do is to put adjustable sights on that handgun and go with the low-level sights, the ones that have the not so much the tritium and real expensive ones, the
Hold that thought, Jim. We got to top the hour break. So we get to after the break. Prepper tip of the day. I want to encourage all of you to work with your pastor to get ushers that are trained and armed for your church. After what happened yesterday in the Nashville suburb of Antioch, Tennessee, I think it's imperative that every Christian church on the planet have ushers that are trained and armed. That's your prepper tip of the day. We're visiting with Jimmy Gensling, which we do most Monday mornings. We're talking about this church shooting and how the church can and should be armed, have armed ushers, and some of the details and nuances of that. Jimmy, you want to finish your thought that you had before the break and before we get to our next caller?
Yes, sir. The point that I'm trying to make, had a little brain tumble there. We've finally, and I got to get with Tim so he can know this and get some information up on the webpage, but we have finally got our dealership with Williams Sights. People in the gun culture and everything may be familiar with Williams. They're one of the old standards for target and keep
they've been
sights
around
and
forever. They've been around forever, yeah.
And everybody that sees my first 1911 I built, I've got the Williams fire sights on it. And if there is any ambient light, and I mean any, even up to a nice starry night, those sights show up. And you can find your sight picture, and you can get on target very rapidly. But look at your Glocks and everything. If you do have one of the ones, and I'm trying to remember how many models there are that have this function, but actually have the dovetails on it so you can replace the sights with aftermarket sights. That is the number one complaint that I have heard from most people, is the sights on the Glocks are really, they leave a lot to be desired.
Right.
Another thing with your handgun, practice instinctive shooting. Now, this is something that we haven't covered before. If we have, it's just been in passing. But instinctive shooting, ladies and gentlemen, you are on the range, you have your target out there, and you have your back to the target. And when someone gives you the command, you draw as you're turning and come up on target and fire 2 rounds. Now, in doing this, you don't have a lot of time to find your sights. What you're doing is you're depending upon that muscle memory that you've built into it all these years. So every time that you go out to the range, at least do 1 magazine at the very minimum on instinctive shooting. In a situation, life or death, someone comes upon your car, tries to break in, you're walking through the parking lot, you're in church, and something happens, the more that you can do on letting your body run on autopilot, the better you're going to be. Because the moment there is a threat, blood pressure is going to go up, heart rate's going to go up, vision is going to get foggy. Anything and everything that can mess up that shot is going to happen, and it's going to happen in milliseconds. So if you practice instinctive shooting, then you're going to be far quicker to get on target. Now,
absolutely.
Once you practice that a bit, take and I carry a couple of targets that has a bad guy holding a civilian, for lack of a better term, as a shield. And there are several different brands of those out there. You can make your own, cut out a silhouette and put it over your target at an angle, or beside it or whatever, but cover up part of your actual target, and be able to have it left, right, or whatever so it can be changed. Do your instinctive shooting so that you have to identify your target. So that is the number one rule of all gun safety, is to identify your target and make sure it's exactly what you want to shoot at.
Absolutely.
If you do this on the instinctive shooting part of it, your subconscious, especially if you've got a target that's got a gun in the hand, your subconscious is going to focus on weapon. Could be a gun, could be a knife, could be a club, could be a 45-foot python, I don't care. But your brain is going to register the threat, register the weapon, and that's what you're going to focus on to identify good guy from bad guy. And every now and then you'll have someone that, if you're really good friends with him and you guys are practicing together, had an individual one time modify one of the targets. I spun around. There was a guy with a gun, but there was also the hostage was a child holding an ice cream cone. And, the brain kind of does a double take for a second. And because the way the target is holding the ice cream cone, is kind of holding it out, like you want to bite.
Right.
And
right.
That'll play with your brain. But practice, practice, practice. And like I said, any pistol that you're carrying for self-defense, I highly recommend, if it can be done, change the sights out it and put a good pair of adjustable sights that are low-level sights that you can that have either like the fire sight. The tritium ones are nice and everything, but my goodness, you're going to start off at around $200 for them. And make that change in your handgun, because if you're focused and you have to depend upon a factory set of sights, and in the heat of the moment, you forget that the factory sights tend to shoot 6 inches to the right at 25 yards, that brings a new hostage situation into don't shoot. So the only time I recommend you shooting in a true, real, honest-to-goodness hostage situation is if you are 100% confident in your shooting ability and your handgun.
Okay,
so,
that's good. Let's go to our callers. We've got 2 callers on hold. First, we go to Ty in Austin, Texas. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning, Ty.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. Thanks for taking the call. I like what y'all are saying, and Jimmy, you're right on point there. There's a few things I wanted to just add quickly, and I think it'll all tie together nicely. First of all, I want to make a comment. You guys are being very fair, and I appreciate it when you touch on that subject of the Glock versus the 1911 style pistols. I own both. I've trained and shot with both, and I like both. So whoever out there is thinking that there's a right or wrong answer, there's not. Glocks are very reliable. They're excellent firearms, but if you don't like them and if they don't fit you, don't worry about it. Switch to something else. And that brings me back to the sight thing that you were talking about, Jimmy. John, I know you're a big fan of having the ability to see your sights at night. Right. And I agree, Jimmy. The Glock sights, where you've got Glock guys out there that are still running your plastic sights that came on that gun, I strongly encourage you to go spend the $80, not $200, $80, I think. Check out XS sight, and there's a pair there you can swap on. You can do it at home on your own, and now you can see your sights at night. And that big dot, XS big dot sight is fantastic for instinctive shooting. That sight pops up like a big old golf ball in front of your eye instead of this little tiny post. But at the end of the day, and maybe you guys might have a dispute about this, but I believe for you folks out there that are thinking about, should I get a gun? And if I'm a pastor, we're talking about the church thing. I know when I get to work this morning, my main captain there is a church-going guy, and I've been encouraging him to get his license. And I think this event will probably be the final one that pushes him over that mental edge to finally be armed and get his license. But at the end of the day, the first thing that's most important is your mindset, and then it's your tactics, then your skill, and then your gear. So you folks out there, don't get too wrapped around the gun. Be more concerned about your mindset and your tactics and skill. And in order to develop those first 3, you have got to go and spend the money and take a force-on-force class. Instinctive shooting, like Jimmy's talking about, is great. That's going to get you halfway there. But if you're not in a full-blown adrenaline dump, in a scenario where you're being asked to make decisions where there are right and wrong answers that would, in a real-life scenario, get you killed or thrown in jail or make you sorry for ever and ever and ever because you didn't do things right, you got to go get the force-on-force training. And I'll tell you, they're not all created equal. So whoever's going to go, all right, I'm going to go do force-on-force training, if you're going to go do some half-day thing where it's a bunch of jokers playing grab-ass out there, that's not what it's about. If you're not being upset, if you're not walking out of the scenarios either depressed or upset with yourself, if you're not sweaty and tired and exhausted at the end of the day, then you didn't take the right class.
That is
I'll leave the gentleman with that.
Excellent advice.
Have a great day, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Okay, appreciate the call, Ty. Training. Right, Jimmy?
Yes, sir. And the force-on-force, that is something I've discussed with a couple of people, going to the airsoft idea. And it's amazing. I've got a couple of good friends, and they're fine. I mean, they're good. They're very disciplined pistol shooters and everything. But whenever I mention that, they just kind of shut down. No, I'm good enough. I'll handle it when it gets there. And that's always kind of bothered me because you need that training. You need that experience. It's amazing the reaction that people will get if you're shooting airsoft and all of a sudden the guy you're shooting at goes, ow, that hurt. That changes your entire perspective of what just went on.
Right. It does.
And it kind of brings the realization home. I'm playing with airsoft now. What's going to happen when I do it with the real thing?
Exactly. Let's go to our next caller, Jimmy. We got Chuck in Roswell, New Mexico. Good morning, Chuck.
I'm so glad you called in, Chuck. This is the gentleman I was explaining about, John.
Okay.
Gary's in his church. They've got a program set up. Chuck, could you explain a little bit about that program and how it works, please, sir?
I sure can. Of course, like all things, it is simple. You got to keep it as simple as possible. But we have 4 teams, and each team is assigned a particular weekend when they serve, and we have 3 services each Sunday. We have more than enough people that, for instance, for the first service, the team that's due that week, 2 or 3 individuals will roam the parking lot and make sure that there's not someone, doing something in the parking lot that they shouldn't, while other members of the team, 3 or 4 of them, which are seated in strategic places in the sanctuary, attend that first service. Upon that second service, the individuals that were inside attending the service are now the ones that are outside roving the parking lot, maintaining security. And come the third service at the end of the day, which is at 5 o'clock in the evening, we normally don't have someone sitting in the congregation in the sanctuary. But, sometimes there is. But usually there's at least 2 people roving the parking lot in that last evening service. All of them, as far as I understand, all of my teammates are concealed carry people, and we leave it up to them for a choice whether they carry it concealed, and some of them might open carry it in the middle of the service. I've carried it both ways. I'm a concealed permit holder myself, but we do have regular training. In fact, coming up next weekend, I believe we have a training session that we include with a lunch, and most of the people show up for that training. They should, because we will train there on the property and talk about carry techniques. We'll train with drawing your weapon, moving through the church. We'll train on some hand-to-hand techniques, some including, for instance, if you happen to be sitting by somebody that you don't know, and maybe they're one of those people that are there to harm others, if you realize they're about to do that and you don't want to draw attention and cause problems, during the service, you might be able to restrain that individual and alert somebody to come help you, and that person could be removed. One thing I didn't mention, it just come to mind, we do have, the church did, it's like a ministry, and the church allotted some money that they were able to order the nice little inexpensive radios that are becoming quite popular now. The Baofeng, I believe, is how the name is pronounced, but they're less than $100. They last a good long while as long as they're taken care of. They're easily programmed, which the individual that maintains them have them. He's the only person that programs the units, and they're all programmed exactly the same. And we all have earbuds. So those who are sitting inside the church during the service can monitor and listen to the activity outside, on top of the fact that if an event occurs in the service inside the building, that they can alert individuals outside for any kind of assistance. But other than that, it's a fairly simple system, and we do have a sign-in roster for the days that you're assigned. You come in and sign. You sign for radio, and you head to your spot wherever you're going to work that day. It's just fairly
Chuck,
simple.
I need to get with you sometime and get this written up so that we can, in a manner that we can get it posted on the website for people to look at as an example. Question, you said that individuals that are inside are strategic. Which
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. We have a break.
We'll
be right back. I got an update on this shooter when we get back. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 25th of September, visiting with Jimmy Ginsling with Desert Eagle Shooters, deserteagleshooters.com. The emphasis on training cannot be overstated, can it, Jimmy?
No, sir. No, sir, it can't. And the question that I was working on, Chuck, just before the break, you were talking about the strategic placement inside the church, but I'd like, your thoughts on that a little bit. But also, this program that you're running, is it something that is based on a program that is out there, or is this something that you and your church members and everything came together and worked on?
This program was in place before I became a member of this congregation, and it was developed by the 4 individuals that are team leaders of each team. They sat down and pretty much hashed it out, which I believe the person that's in charge overall of the 4 teams is a retired law enforcement official, and I'm not sure how long they've had this in place. I guess probably in the probably around the 9/11 that they decided to do such, or maybe even later. But like I said, it's been in place for quite some time. In question for strategic placement, our sanctuary area has 4 points of entry and exit, and there. If you look at it the way the building is built, there's a east-west and a southern there's 2 west entrances and an east entrance exit, and then a southern one. And those individuals that are on the team usually sit on the end of an aisle, or that they have aisle access. I usually sit on the far west end of mine, since there's 2 exits there. But I sit on the end because I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", Jimmy. You know that. But I mean, I sit there for one, for comfort, but 2, for strategic ability to move between the 2 entrances, exits on my side. But most of our people do sit on aisles where they have ability for movement. But in regards to carrying the firearm, we just don't have our teams for that kind of security. Of course, churches are full of, and I hate to say it this way, it sounds wrong, but they're full of elderly people and people who have ailments and whatever. And for instance, here in the last month or two, one of our members of our congregation had a medical episode, and we actually have a doctor who's on one of our teams. In fact, there's 2 doctors. One is one's a dentist, but still, he has training, that relates to be able to work with people who are having a medical episode of any kind. It's just basic first aid that anyone can learn, and that's something important too in your training for teams like these in your churches, to have first aid and CPR and everything you would get as you would have as a lifeguard. But when you came back, you said training. That's right. That's very important.
It's just fascinating. As long as I've known you, I've never discussed this in depth with you, and I just find it fascinating. Now, in the event, now I know in your training and everything, you cover things. In the event,
hold that thought, Jimmy. Hold that thought. We have a break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. I've worked with men and women involved in the high-end shelters for years. With the Ozark Survival Homesteads, you get things you don't get with the high-end shelters. You get a opportunity to be in the bunker, of course. You also get a home, a 60 by 90 lot. You get your storable food, your livestock share, your garden, greenhouse share, your seed bank share. One person to have everything they need, right at $25,000. For a family of 3, $37,000. You really need to check this out. It's very unique. At my website, you'll see the Ozark Survival Homesteads on the left side of my homepage. Go there, read that one page, fill out the form with your name, your email address, and your telephone number, and I will forward that to the guys and gals at the Ozark Survival Homesteads. Check it out. You'll be very glad you did. Thank you very much. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 25th of September. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. Lots of interesting things there, free downloads, such as a book older than the Christian Bible, The Art of War by General Sun Tzu. I think you may find that interesting, sold in the book section of most bookstores. mandatory reading in most military academies. Also, my website, of course, you'll find the Energy Cleaner, a marvelous healing device. If you have issues with joint pain, arthritis, back pain, yep, it'll probably help you. Work too hard during the day, got some achy muscles at night, wake up pain-free in the morning. That's what I do. Not getting a great night's sleep, you probably will with the Energy Cleaner. Keep in mind, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do, a 30-day money-back guarantee. Only $285, shipping included for the Energy Cleaner. The mattress pads that go with it, they vary in price depending on what you get. You got the small travel size, and then the twin, full, Queen King, California King. Everything's right there at my website, including the patent application information. This is my home business. When you place your order, I'm the guy that packs them up and ships them from the little country store and post office at Cherryville, Missouri. I do take PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can send checks to my address at thelibertyman.com. I got a toll-free hotline 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Well, gentlemen, I was doing some research here in the last few minutes. The shooter in Tennessee, his Facebook page showed him supporting Islam, supporting Sharia law, supporting communist Robert Mugabe in Africa. So I think we're getting a better picture of who this guy is. And let's continue our discussion.
How come? I'm not surprised. The fun part about technology, John, is Chuck and I were kind of back and forth on texting there during the break. And the question that I wanted to get into is, now Chuck has explained how they've got this system set up, roving patrols inside in the congregation. The question I wanted to cover is, how do you implement the plan, Chuck? The bad guy comes in the west door, and can you just walk us through your scenario of what you guys have trained to do and how you would do it?
Okay. Well, if you think about it, most people. Well, let's talk about the assailant. When I say most people, when the assailant arrives into the where he wants to cause trouble, he has a plan, and usually, the biggest part of the plan is cause as much trouble as possible, or to execute. And again, hate saying things the way they are, but execute people or whatever he's after. But he'll step in that congregation, and if he's not been there before, there's that split moment that he's going to scan for targets. If he entered the door on my side, of course, my first reaction is to pop up and draw his attention. That moment, drawing his attention, is kind of like the animal kingdom, to not so much scare them off, but to give them an idea of what they're dealing with. You might throw up your arms or whatever. I may even draw my pistol, but the first thing I would do is draw their attention and look as big a target as possible and make as much noise as possible. And it sounds silly, but to attempt to disorientate that person from their plan. And of course that's achieved by many ways, again, by sound and by physical motion and your appearance of how big you are, how small you are. But on top of that, making the noise draws the attention of the congregation. Hopefully that they react in a manner that benefits you in trying to protect them. But also it alerts the other individuals on your team that there's a situation occurring. You might think of it as the way a bird might draw the attention of a predator to get them away from their nest. That's the intent once somebody enters your side of the area you're working in. Of course, if you have an opportunity to draw your firearm, which you should be able to, because that person is like, what's going on? Someone knows I'm here. And if you can, shoot to kill. Don't like saying that either, but it's a sobering fact of today's life. Something that I remember as a child not discussing about going to church. We hear church and this happens, shoot to kill. No, but I mean that's how I would execute that. And let's look at the other way. If somebody enters the other side of the church and that individual has to react, immediately that person will attempt to draw their attention. I myself, if it was on the east side of the church, I'm on the west. Of course, I would assess that situation. If there was at least 2 or 3 other individuals able to move upon that person in front of them in the congregation, that the individual, the assailant, would have an opportunity to retreat through that door. Of course, having knowledge of the church myself, if it were worth it, I could exit one of my west doors and immediately check to see if there were other assailants that might, instead of just one. And that's one thing that I don't think we've actually stopped to talk about, or anyone. In all of these church shootings, there's only been one assailant. What if there were 2 or more?
Well, it wasn't. Let me interrupt you, Chuck. It wasn't at a church, but at San Bernardino, we did have 2 assailants, a man and a wife. So it
true.
is.
So wasn't
right. So
what was her?
We always.
What was her?
Say again. Well, they were both meant to cause harm in San Bernardino, the husband and wife.
It was a Christmas party.
Yep. He was going after his previous co-workers is what he was doing. But it's always good to keep in mind the possibility of 2 or more assailants. That has to be part of the training.
Yeah. In thinking about San Bernardino, were both the assailants, the husband and wife, did they both enter together? Think of Columbine as well. Didn't they enter together? And did they fan out or did they stay together? There's too many scenarios to talk about. But,
right. Well, you don't train for scenarios. You use scenarios in your training, obviously, but you train your people to be flexible and deal with any scenario that's thrown at them. So you train skills. You don't train scenarios.
True, very true.
You and I are going to have to discuss
real quick.
this much more later today, Chuck.
Yes.
Now, in what we're going through right there, I'm at some point in setting this all up, the congregation itself, the non-participants, for lack of a better term, have you worked it in to where, like through Sunday school classes or actually during the service at some time, briefed parishioners about what to do in this situation? Or are they just basically kind of aware that you might be there, but not so much what to do?
The congregation is aware of the individuals out, whether the individuals working inside the church or sitting in with them, and of the individuals outside. That's probably one of the biggest discussions that we have when we do get together to train and to discuss the SOP, which the SOP is always evolving. That the congregation, that you can only hope that they react or behave in a manner that's going to be beneficial to the people reacting to the situation, to the teams,
and let the team do their work, but to give them a clear path or something. Excellent.
I mean, traditionally,
I'm so glad you called in on this, because, like I say, John, we've discussed this a couple of times. John, have you got any questions for him?
Well, just a comment. One of the things we teach in concealed carry training is you train your students to shoot to stop, not shoot to kill. And this has a lot to do with liability, of course. Obviously, a major caliber projectile going into a person's chest is highly likely to kill them. But as far as the training itself, you tell your students to shoot to stop. And there are some serious liability issues if you're teaching people to shoot to kill. Obviously, it's the right thing to do in certain situations, but we don't train that way.
Well, I agree on that, and I apologize for terminology is a big deal. But I mean,
it is.
In my concealed carry training, it is shoot to stop the threat. That's correct, and terminology is everything. That's right, though, and I.
That's okay. That's okay. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to get carried away. Another comment on pistol sights. In normal light situations, pistol sights are used for training. When you're facing the criminal, the perpetrator, you can look at his eyes, you can look at his hands, and you can look at his pistol sights. You can't look at all those things at the same time. Once you've had enough training and there is sufficient light, and it's not a hostage situation where you're shooting at a very small target, half a man's head, because he's concealed behind the hostage, pistol sights are basically going to be there for a quick reference if necessary, but not the same way you'd use them in training, where you're actually focusing on the front sight as opposed to focusing on the perpetrator. And that's something that people learn after many hours and hours and days and weeks and months and years of training, is that the purpose of the sights is primarily for training in most situations. Any comment there, Jimmy?
That goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the instinctive shooting building. That's why we build muscle memory, ladies and gentlemen, is we don't have to what's the word I'm thinking of? Diagnose. Don't have to assess every step that we're going to do. And
well, here's something for both of you. Let me interrupt you here, Jimmy.
Sure.
You can incorporate this, Chuck, into what you're doing, and everybody listening. First of all, it's a medical term. The medical term is tachyphrenia. Most Americans experience it when they're in an automobile accident where they'll make the comment, it seemed like the car was in slow motion as it was spinning around and crashing. Football players experience it every time the ball snapped. Baseball players say they can see the stitching on a baseball going 100 miles an hour, and they can, in fact, do that. Tachy is fast. Phrenia is brain activity. Any life-threatening situation, your brain activity speeds up so fast that time appears to slow down. And in a life-threatening situation, tachyphrenia will be fully and completely kicked in, allowing you to do things that you could never, ever do under normal circumstances in terms of identifying the threat, drawing your weapon, and aiming and firing at and stopping the threat. All those things taking place in 1 or 2 seconds and being done much more efficiently because of tachyphrenia, gentlemen.
I've heard you discuss that, or actually we have discussed that before, and I'd forgotten about the technical term. But, ladies and gentlemen, what we're trying to get across today, this situation that happened in Tennessee, we've had Chuck on here. Chuck and his congregation saw situations like this arising in the future, and someone in their congregation took the time to sit down, formulate a plan on how to protect the parishioners, a means to do it, the volunteers to do it, and then work them together as a team. If someone wants more information on this, you can go to my website, www.deserteagleshooters.com. Use the contact form there. You can email me direct at jimi@hdc-nm.com. Even call me if you need to, 575-513-2842. I'll get your information, and I'll discuss this with Chuck, and we'll see if we cannot come up with a plan to implement to be able to provide at least the basic of what you've got to do to implement this in your own congregation. And this is going to get worse. That's the only thing I can see coming. And the Bible tells us it's going to get worse. Argue with me all you want. Argue with John all you want. Arguing with God is a fruitless, lost cause. And I think we all understand that. Chuck, I really appreciate
only Moses
taking the
is
time.
arguing
And like
with
I
God.
said, I think we're going to get together later today sometime, and I want to discuss this more with you on that.
Yes, sir.
These gentlemen, these conversations,
only Moses.
right? These conversations are taking place all over the 50 states today. You can count on it. They'll be taking place here in my county today because I'm going to initiate it if nobody else does. And these conversations need to happen. We need to keep our people safe from the Muslim terrorists, and it needs to happen right now.
Yes, sir, it does.
One comment I might add. I mean, if you're interested in, I mean, you may not know that in your congregation, in your churches, they may already have a plan that they're putting together, or there was one that was in place before but has fallen to the wayside. I mean, we all let some of our projects kind of fall apart and become forgotten. It may help you to ask your leadership in your church.
We have our last break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. Let's come back. J.R. Moore here on Monday the 25th. Okay, got about 3 minutes here. Chuck, if you're still there, I want to thank you for being with us. It was very productive to have your call.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. Jimmy, I think the best thing we can wrap up this show with is encouraging people to take action, to talk to their pastor, to the deacons. It's going to be up to the deacons and the pastors of these churches all over the 50 states to take action, make sure that they have trained, armed ushers to deal with these criminals effectively. What do you think, sir?
Oh, yes, sir. And when you talk to your pastors today, include the youth leaders, include everybody, but if they question, well, I don't know this, or I'm not sure about that, it might not happen here. Ask them if they think that church that it happened to this weekend woke up that morning and was planning on having a shooter come into their church. The only reason, and it's only by the grace of God that there wasn't anything worse on that, is because you had one usher that did have a gun in his car. Like I said earlier, wrong place in my opinion, but no matter what, God intervened, and that's the only way that happened, is God set up the scenario in his time to allow this individual to get to his car, get to his gun, and take care of this.
Well said. Well said.
I just ask everybody to pray about it first, then discuss it, and it may take some prodding. If you've got friends that feel the same way, go as 2 or 3 to talk to the pastor. I don't want to read about this happening again. It would just tear me up to find out that one of our RBN listeners was involved in one of these instances. So between now and next week, John, we'll see if we can work out some other subjects and see if we can come up with a few more training ideas that we can work into this scenario.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Chuck, again, thank you for calling in, and I'll talk to you here in a little bit.
Jimmy, thank you, sir, and we'll have you back next Monday. Appreciate it.
Take care, everybody.
Okay. Serious stuff. These are serious times we live in, obviously. Oh, tomorrow we'll have Leon Green with us. The second hour, first hour, we'll have open lines. Wednesday, we should have Professor McKinney with us, first hour. And it'll be the usual lineup with your calls, always welcome, as always. And looking forward to a fun, full, productive week with everybody here at Republic Broadcasting. Pray for the family of that woman who was shot to death by the Muslim terrorists yesterday. And make sure your church puts in protocols to be safe. Seriously, you need to do that. In the meantime, get your medical supplies, your energy cleaner, your essential oils now while you can, your firearms, ammunition. Never, ever give up your guns. Have a fun, safe, productive day, and God bless America.